If you've tried cold email outreach in the B2B world, but you weren't getting the results that you wanted, this may be one of the reasons why. Now this unfortunately goes all the way back to the setup side of things, okay? So you can even keep the campaign the way that it is. That may not be what the issue is. It actually could be from a tech setup side of things, okay? So there's 3 different things that you need, essentially 3 different email accounts that you need in order to successfully make sure that your campaign is getting to the right people, okay? So I'm gonna talk about what they are in this video. This will probably be a quick enough video because it's very simple, straightforward. So, as I said in previous videos, when you're reaching out to people, you do not use your original company domain, okay? So you don't use what your website is, okay? So let's say that you are xyzcompany.com. That's essentially the website that people can see. That is what the public sees. This is where people essentially see your digital business card as your website, okay? So you cannot use that for email outreach, okay? I've mentioned that before. What you need to do, and you're probably well aware of this for most of you, you need to use different domains, okay? You essentially burner domains, okay? Because these could be destroyed, okay? Because one person could have a bad day, they could see your email, even though it could be incredibly relevant, they could go, I don't know this person, they reached out to me and I didn't want to hear from them, I'm gonna mark them as spam, okay? Now, that tends to not happen, but I'm just giving a very extreme example here, okay? So what you need to do is you need to get some different domains that are very similar to this, but would be somewhat relevant as well, okay? So let's just say that the first one is xyz-company. And by the way, you should always try and get .coms as well because there's a lot more trust with .coms. Let's say that the next one is go-xyzcompany.com. Let's say the next one is go with no dash xyzcompany.com. Okay, now look, there's loads of different ways that you can use this. There's loads of different domains that you could get. I'm just giving some examples here as well, okay? Now, first of all, the first thing that you should do with all of these domains that you now have, excuse me, you should redirect them all. Excuse me again. You should redirect every single one of them because if you reach out to somebody, they're essentially going to copy and paste this to figure out a bit more about who you are and why they should respond to you essentially. But that doesn't exist, okay? We know that this doesn't exist because that's your real website. This doesn't exist. What you need to do, and most domain providers will allow you to do this internally as in their own system, you essentially need to redirect this, that it goes back here, okay? So that anytime someone looks at this, or this, or this, that it all goes back up here as well, okay? Because it all has to go back to the main one. Now, that's what's known as a 301 redirect. To get technical, that means it's a permanent redirect. Most people will never, ever know that it redirects to that, okay? Because it happens like that, and most people aren't looking at their URL bar to see, did this page redirect? That's just not how most people work, okay? We've sent, it's gotta be hundreds, thousands of emails at this stage in regards to outreach over the last, I don't know how many years. We've only ever had one person say, I copy and pasted this particular URL and it went to this, okay? Big deal that they said that, makes no difference, okay? Don't be focusing on those kind of people and don't be worried about if that's ever gonna happen, okay? So again, all these domains have to go back to that top one as well, okay? Now, each of these domains, and this is where the meat of this video comes into play now, we can't just use the same email provider for everything here, okay? Because realistically and statistically, about, actually, let me put up some different boxes here instead, okay? Because this will be relevant to what I'm about to do. So we have box number 1 for that domain, box number 2 for this domain, and we have box number 3 for this domain, okay? So I'll actually go over why we need these individual domains first of all, and then I'll go over statistically and realistically why we do, okay? So this first domain that we have, the email accounts that are for this domain, they should be on a Google Workspace, okay? And I'll explain why in just a moment, okay? This next domain that we have, they should be on a Microsoft/Outlook email accounts, okay? The next one should be on what most people refer to as private infrastructure, okay? Now we specifically use, I think the company's called MailForge that we use for our private infrastructure emails. I can leave a link for them in the comment and the description below as well. But the reason we want to have multiple different email accounts from multiple different providers is because in order to stay out of the spam box and to earn as much trust as possible with the email service providers being Google, Outlook, and whoever you're using for private infrastructure. Essentially, they don't like cold outreach. They don't like cold email. They don't want people doing it on their servers, okay? So what you need to do to get around this is, first of all, get the different domains, and secondly, put 3 to 5 email accounts in each of these, okay? So this one, as an example, I'll just do one example here. Let's say that the first email that's in this one here is, let's say it is jane@xyz-company.com. The next one is going to be jane.doe@xyzcompany.com, and the next one will be jane.d@xyzcompany.com. Okay, so we want to have 3 to 5 emails within each of these. First of all, because we don't want to be sending this exact same message to multiple different people from the same email account, because that's just going to mark as a spam. Okay, we want to have multiple different emails. Again, you don't want to have too many, because if that domain gets burned, all these get burned, you're paying for them as well. Okay, so 3 to 5 is kind of the sweet spot there. Those email accounts, by the way, they'll be sending 10 to 20 emails max a day each. So obviously the more of these that you have, the more that you can send out. But again, the whole reason that I was putting together this video is because to keep out of different spam boxes, let's say that you are reaching out to a company and they use Google for their overall workspace. So everyone involved in that company is Google. So it's tom@whatever.com, okay? It's Stephen@whatever.com as well, okay? So it doesn't actually make a difference. But because these emails are on a Google server, essentially Google workspace server, Google likes to send to Google. Google has trust within Google. So Google will say, oh, this is from a Google account, this must be safe, put it into that person's inbox. So then, because your essentially cold email outreach accounts are on a Google workspace, you bypass all the gates to get into other people's inboxes who are also using Google, okay? Now, if this was the other way around, and let's say that you are using Google, but this company, that next company that you're reaching out to, they use Microsoft. Well, all of a sudden, Microsoft go, oh, that's from a different server. We don't know if we can trust them. Let's not let these people in, okay? So then all of a sudden, your email goes into the spam box. So that means that that person, you never got a reply from them, and because they had no chance to reply to you, because you went into the spam box. Why would they reply to you if you're in the spam box? Most people aren't checking their spam box, and even if they do, they're not going to look in the spam box and go, oh, this seems like it would be safe to respond to. You have to remember that that's just not how it works, okay? Now, if we set it up that the next accounts were on, and again, we can do this as well, because let's say that on the next account, and we can use the exact same emails, okay, because it's a different domain. So now we have jane@go-xyzcompany.com, jane.doe@go-xyzcompany.com, okay? I know this can get a little confusing, but basically you are just putting different email addresses under each of the different domains, and you can keep the same email addresses every single time as well. That's the fantastic part, because this is the only part that changes every single time, okay? But now all of a sudden, let's say that these are all under a Microsoft account, okay? So the first company that we tried to reach out to, they were on a Google server, if you remember, okay? So now Google is saying, oh, that's not from Google, that's from a different server. We don't know if we can trust them. Let's put them in the spam box just to be extra safe, okay? So again, we want to avoid that, because what we want to do is, if this person is a Microsoft email account instead, and their whole organization uses Microsoft, we are Microsoft sending to Microsoft. Microsoft go, hey, this is a Microsoft email from a Microsoft account. That must be safe. Let's put them into the main inbox. We won't put them in spam. That's essentially how this works in a nutshell, okay? So the reason that we want to have multiples of these is because, depending on the email outreach tool that you're using, now we use Instantly. You can check out a link for them in the description if you want. It is an affiliate link, just to be honest and transparent. We'll actually say that in the description as well. But the reason that we do that is because you can do what's known as ESP routing in the likes of Instantly, okay? That means email service provider routing. Instantly will be able to check on your behalf automatically if somebody's organization uses Google. If it does, they will only use your Google accounts to send to Google. If they use Microsoft, they will only use your Microsoft accounts to send to Microsoft, okay? You can set that up. It's a free feature, as far as I'm aware. It's a free feature within Instantly, as in you don't have to pay anything extra for it. And this just helps you get into way more inboxes. It helps you get past all these kind of spam gates and all this sort of stuff as well, okay? So it's super, super important, especially in this day and age of outreach, that you have not only Google accounts, okay? Even if you use Google yourself, you can't just use Google for outreach, okay? You have to have Google, you have to have Microsoft, and you have to have private infrastructure as well, okay? Now, private infrastructure is less people are using that, but the statistics typically are that about 50% of people you're going to reach out to use Google, even if they're aware of it or not. That's what their IT department's using. Realistically, about 40%, maybe 40 to 45% of people are using Microsoft, and kind of 5 to 10% of people are using private infrastructures, okay? So we have it set up in our instantly that Google goes to Google, Microsoft goes to Microsoft, and private infrastructure goes to private infrastructures, okay? Now, you don't have to have it only like this as well, okay? If you don't want to set up any private infrastructure, or you don't want to set up any Google, let's say, you can also put in individual rules, ESP rules within instantly. And these are settings within the campaign specifically, that you can say that, well, if it is our Google accounts, that they're okay to also send to private infrastructure, okay? You can also say, if you want, which I wouldn't recommend, you can say that our Google accounts can not only send to Google, but they can also send to Microsoft, okay? Now, just to be clear, the example I gave earlier, it doesn't mean that every single email that you send from Google to Microsoft will go into spam. Some of them will get through. And again, depending on how you've done your overall setup in the background, and by the way, if you want a bit of help with all this to make sure you get it right, you can check out the first link in the description. But if you do want to handle all that sort of stuff, as I said, check out the first link. But it doesn't mean that you won't get into people's inboxes. If you've set these things up correctly, you still have a strong chance to get through. It just means you have a stronger chance if you're using Google to Google, Microsoft to Microsoft, so on and so forth as well, okay? But if you only ever want to set up Google accounts and do all your outreach from that, you can. You can even set up these individual rules that they can send to anybody. It just is a lot safer to get through to different inboxes if you're using Google, Microsoft, and private infrastructure as well, okay? So hopefully you got some value from that particular video. You can understand why we use 3 different email service providers. Again, it's just for anything that we can do to give us any sort of bump in getting into somebody's inbox so they can actually see our email, open our email, and reply to an email. Obviously, that's what we want. We'll do everything that we can to try and actually get the emails into the inbox correctly. And this is what most people won't do, because it starts from the setup side of things. And look, I'm not going to lie, this is a bit technical, okay? Just to be honest and transparent, yeah, it's a bit technical to set this up. It takes a bit of time to get your head around. Again, I know that you're looking at different domains, you're looking at different emails with all these different domains. I understand it can be a bit confusing, okay? But trust me, once you do this the first time, yeah, it might take a moment or two to get your head around it, but you'll be able to do this again and again and again. And again, we can see what the statistics are of why it's so relevant to use this as well, okay? Now again, even if you're only using Google, you'll at least reach the majority of people on their inboxes because they're on the same server as you as well, okay? Or at least the same email service provider. So yeah, hopefully you got some value from that. If there's anything in particular that you do want a bit of extra help in regards to email outreach, you can leave a comment below. And actually, before I go as well, one more thing that I should say, I've said this in other videos before as well, but even when you set up all these different email accounts within these different domains as well, you can't just jump straight into launching a campaign, okay? As excited as you are to start getting replies and start getting new people into your pipeline, you have to wait, because these emails need to warm up, okay? Because that email has never existed, that domain has never existed, and the ESPs know that, okay? And these are kind of, I suppose you could say, ranking factors that they use to determine whether somebody is trustworthy and safe. So you have to warm up those emails from anywhere between 14 to 30 days. I like to personally err on the side of caution. I like to go 30 days. If you're really excited to jump into this, you can do 14, but just understand that you might not get into everybody's inbox about only 14 days of warm-ups. You essentially need to warm up for, in my opinion, a minimum of 30 days, okay? So hopefully you got some value from that video, and we'll see you in the next one.